My name is Isabella, I'm 24 years old, and on the outside, my family looked perfect. We lived in one of those quiet suburban neighborhoods where the lawns were manicured, neighbors waved politely, and the air always smelled faintly of barbecue in the summer. My parents, Mark and Evelyn, were the kind of couple people envied. At least, that's how it looked. Dad worked as a financial advisor, Mom was a homemaker who also dabbled in volunteering at the community center. They were pillars of the neighborhood, always smiling, always hosting dinners. And then there was my sister, Lena. 2 years older than me. Blonde, effortlessly beautiful, the kind of girl who walked into a room and made heads turn. She was the golden child, the one my parents bragged about at every holiday dinner. Me? I was the quiet one. The dreamer. The one who stayed up late reading books instead of going to parties, the one who painted in her room instead of chasing boys. I was fine with it, though. Or at least, I told myself I was. Because deep down, I always knew, in my parents' eyes, Lena could do no wrong, and I was just the extra. The favoritism wasn't subtle. When Lena got her first car at 16, it was a shiny new convertible with a bow on top. When I turned 16, I got, Dad's old beat-up Toyota Corolla. Be grateful, they told me, while Lena drove around town like a princess. When Lena went off to college, they paid her tuition in full, gave her an apartment near campus, and showered her with care packages. When it was my turn, community college is fine for you, Isabella. You don't need to leave town. It hurt, of course it did. But I swallowed it, again and again, telling myself maybe someday they'd see me for who I was. Maybe someday I'd matter just as much. But someday never came. The breaking point came one winter, Christmas Eve, to be exact. The house was decorated like something out of a Hallmark movie. Lights twinkled on the tree, garlands lined the staircase, and Lena was home from college, prancing around like the queen she thought she was. That afternoon, Mom waltzed into the kitchen where I was peeling potatoes, and said casually, "By the way, Lena invited some of her friends over for Christmas dinner tomorrow. Just 25 people. You'll handle the cooking, won't you, Isabella?" I froze, knife in hand. Excuse me? 25 people? She smirked, as if it was the most natural thing in the world. Well, you don't mind, do you? Lena deserves to celebrate with her friends. You're good at helping out. Helping out. That's what they called it when they treated me like the live-in maid. I looked at Lena, who was sprawled on the couch scrolling through her phone, and she didn't even glance up. Not a word of thanks. Not even acknowledgement. And in that moment, something inside me snapped. I remember forcing a smile. Of course, Mom. Don't worry. I'll take care of it. But inside, my heart was pounding. My blood boiled. That night, while everyone slept, I packed a small suitcase, booked the cheapest flight I could find, and the next morning, while the house was still silent, I slipped out the door. Where did I go? Florida. Not because I had family there, not because I had plans. Just because it was far enough away to make a statement. When they all woke up expecting their obedient daughter/servant to be slaving away in the kitchen, what they found instead was nothing. Just an empty house. No food prepared. No obedient Isabella waiting to serve. And Mom's shocked, pale face when she realized I was gone. Yeah, I savored that mental picture for weeks. But as satisfying as it was, that was only the beginning. Because I had no idea the real storm, the real betrayal, was waiting just around the corner. Fast forward a few months. I was back home, working part-time at an art supply store while saving up for my dream, opening my own little gallery one day. Life was simple, but for once, it was mine. And then he walked in. Daniel. Tall, charming, with dark hair that curled just slightly at the ends and eyes that seemed to see right through you. He was everything I thought I wanted, attentive, sweet, the kind of guy who remembered the little things, like how I took my coffee or the fact that I loved sunflowers. We started dating, and for the first time in years, I felt chosen. Seen. Like maybe I wasn't invisible after all. My parents, surprisingly, adored him. Even Lena, usually cold and dismissive toward anything related to me, was unusually friendly when Daniel was around. Too friendly, now that I think about it. But back then? I was just so happy to finally have something, someone, that belonged to me. Or so I thought. Looking back, there were signs. The late-night texts Daniel brushed off as work. The way Lena would casually ask when he was coming over, or the times she'd linger just a little too long in conversation with him. But I ignored it. Because love makes you blind. Until the day I wasn't blind anymore. And that, my friends, is where the real story begins. It wasn't one big thing at first, it was tiny details. The way he'd tilt his phone away from me when a notification popped up. The sudden work emergencies that pulled him away at odd hours. The smell of a perfume I didn't wear lingering faintly on his shirt. I tried to reason with myself. He's busy. You're just insecure. Don't ruin a good thing, Isabella. And then there was Lena. My sister. My golden child sister who had never once shown interest in my life, until Daniel. She laughed at his jokes a little too hard. She always, just happened, to walk into the room when he was there. And whenever I mentioned marriage, or the future, she'd smirk in that smug way that made my skin crawl. But again, I ignored it. Because admitting the truth, that something was going on between them, was too painful to even imagine. The first crack in Daniel's perfect boyfriend image came on my birthday. I'd been hinting for weeks about wanting to spend the day together. Nothing fancy, just dinner, maybe a walk under the stars. He promised he'd be there. But when the day came? No Daniel. Just a text at 8 p.m. Sorry babe, something came up at work. Rain check? I sat there at the restaurant alone, watching couples laugh around me, pretending I wasn't on the verge of tears. But what stung more wasn't his absence. It was that Lena wasn't home either. From that night forward, my radar was on high alert. I started noticing patterns. Whenever Daniel bailed on me, Lena was mysteriously unavailable too. They both had new hobbies that kept them busy. And once, I swear I saw his car parked 2 blocks away from our house, even though he swore he was working late. My chest tightened with suspicion, but still, I held back. Because suspicion wasn't proof. And proof was what I needed. It happened on a rainy Friday night. Daniel had promised to take me out to dinner, but, surprise, surprise, he canceled last minute. Late meeting, he said, his voice tight. I remember sitting on my bed, staring at my phone, and something inside me just snapped. Enough was enough. I grabbed my keys, threw on a jacket, and decided to drive. I didn't know where, I just knew I had to move, to follow that sick feeling gnawing at me. And then, as I turned down Main Street, I saw it. Daniel's car. Parked outside a little boutique hotel, tucked away from the main road. My heart started pounding so hard I thought it might explode. My first instinct was denial. No. It's not what it looks like. Maybe he's meeting a client. But then the door opened. And out stepped Lena. My sister. My flesh and blood. My supposed family. She was laughing, her hair tousled, Daniel's jacket draped over her shoulders. And right behind her, Daniel himself. His arm slipped casually around her waist like it belonged there. My vision blurred with hot, stinging tears. I gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. I couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. And then, just to twist the knife deeper, they kissed. Right there under the dim glow of the streetlight. I don't even remember getting out of my car. My body moved on autopilot. What the hell is this? They both froze, like deer caught in headlights. Isabella, Daniel started, but I cut him off with a scream. Don't you dare say my name. My voice cracked. How long? How long has this been going on? Lena smirked. Smirked. Like she was proud of it. Since before your precious little birthday. The world tilted. My own sister. My boyfriend. Together. Daniel stammered something about love, about not meaning to hurt me. But his words were just noise. All I could hear was the sound of my own heart shattering into a million jagged pieces. I spat at the ground between them. You deserve each other. Both of you. But trust me, you're going to regret this. And then I walked away, my body trembling, tears streaming down my face, but a fire igniting in my chest that I'd never felt before. Because that was the night my heartbreak transformed into something far more dangerous. Revenge. When I stormed into the house that night, Mom was waiting in the living room. She took one look at my tear-streaked face and sighed. Oh, Isabella. What did you do this time? I laughed bitterly. What I did? Maybe ask your favorite daughter what she's been doing with my boyfriend. Her expression didn't even flicker. Now, don't exaggerate. I'm sure it's just a misunderstanding. Lena wouldn't do that. And that was the final nail in the coffin. My parents didn't care. My sister had betrayed me. My boyfriend had humiliated me. I was truly, utterly alone. But being alone had one advantage. I could plot without anyone suspecting a thing. In the weeks that followed, I went quiet. On the outside, I played the part of the broken-hearted girl, keeping to myself, avoiding confrontation, letting them believe they'd won. But on the inside? I was sharpening my mind like a blade. Because if they thought I was just going to fade into the background and let them live happily ever after, they didn't know me at all. And that, my friends, was the beginning of the end. When everything you thought you knew dissolves in a single moment, the world becomes a strange, sharpened place. Colors are brighter. Sounds are louder. Pain is raw and immediate, but it's not the only thing that remains. There's clarity too, cold, bright, and unforgiving. For the first week after that rainy night, I barely slept. I drifted through the days on autopilot. I answered the few shifts I took at the art store, I ate cereal from the box, I let the sun fall across the living room floor while the house went on pretending everything was normal. My family continued their rehearsed performances. My mother volunteered, my father went to work, and Lena went on like she hadn't just stomped through my life and left a crater. People kept saying things like, "You'll get over it." As if grief and betrayal were like a cold you could shrug off with time. They had no idea. This wasn't about losing a boyfriend. It was about being erased, replaced, laughed at, by the people whose faces lined my childhood photos. Grief was there, sure, explosive and hot. But it had company. Anger arrived, neat and controlled. So did a new kind of resolve that felt less like revenge and more like reclamation. I told myself the first honest thing I'd said in months would not be the invisible one anymore. I started small. I kept my face calm. I learned to smile when Lena pranced by, to nod when Daniel passed by like he was nothing. They fed on shock. They fed on the idea that I was broken and unthreatening. So I put on the mask the world expected and kept my eyes open. At night, I sat at my small kitchen table with a notebook and a pen. I wrote everything down, dates, odd texts, the nights Daniel claimed to be working late, the times Lena had a suspicious smirk. I made mental inventories of favors my parents had given Lena, the ways they'd minimized me, the car, the college money, the birthday that never happened. I started taking photographs, not of them, because I wasn't stupid, but of the ways the house had been theirs and never mine. Gift receipts, hotel reservations that lined my email, I would later find one charged under a name I didn't know, comments from Lena's friends on social media praising her loyalty to Daniel in ways that made me sick. I was building a map. I didn't know yet where it would lead, but I wanted every corner cataloged. There was a line in an old movie I'd loved as a kid, "We first make our wounds into weapons." I would not let mine fester and rot. I would make mine precise. You're not supposed to involve other people in private pain. People told me to keep things to myself. But secrets, I realized, were the addicts of betrayal. They needed an outlet. I reached out to two people. The first was Maya, my best friend since grade school, who still knew the truest parts of me. She was blunt, practical, and had a temper I loved. The second was Mr. Patel, the elderly owner of the art supply shop where I worked. He had a way of making people feel seen, and more importantly, he had a ruthless streak for fairness. Maya showed up at my apartment the night I finally told someone everything. We drank lukewarm coffee and she listened without blinking. When I finished, she sat back and didn't say anything dramatic. She only asked one question: how do you want them to feel? Not what they deserved. Not how you'll get them back. Just a strange, simple question that cut through the noise. How did I want them to feel? The answer surprised me. I didn't want to watch them suffer. I wanted to watch myself stand tall. Mr. Patel offered a different kind of alliance. People who build their entire life on acting will crumble when their show is cancelled, he told me, and then he did something small and useful. He introduced me to people in the gallery world, photographers and curators who could help me craft an image, not of them, but of me. Art could be a stage, a mirror, a weapon that didn't require blood. He had an old contact, a curator named Rosa, who liked subversive female narratives. Rosa's eyes gleamed when I told her, and she said, "We'll give them an exhibit they can't ignore." That was all. No details. Just a promise. Plans, I learned quickly, are different from fantasies. Fantasies imagine the moment of triumph, the exact look of regret on someone's face, the applause. Plans, however, are the quieter things you do before the lights come up, the small, disciplined acts that create inevitability. I wanted them to taste the worst flavor I'd tasted, public indifference toward the facade they'd built. I wanted the world to see Lena and Daniel the way I'd seen them that night, imperfect, messy, not worthy of the pedestal. But I also wanted to reclaim my life, so my plan had two pillars: expose the truth and rebuild on my terms. Expose the truth, however, didn't mean a drunk social media post or a public meltdown. It meant orchestrating situations where their pretenses would unravel without my hand being too obvious. It meant leveraging the very things they used to prop themselves up: social status, reputation, the illusion of control, and showing how hollow they were. Rebuilding meant reclaiming space. The gallery world offered a perfect vehicle. A show could spotlight narratives of invisibility, betrayal, and rising. If I could shape that narrative and anchor it to my face and my voice, then every critique, every photo, every mention would be a small victory. Not for humiliation. For survival. For presence. There's a seductive thing about anger. It gives you energy when grief leaves you numb. But it also blurs the line between justice and cruelty. I made a rule for myself: I would not do anything that would turn me into them. No lies that I couldn't look at in the mirror. No acts that would harm someone else physically or permanently. Revenge, I decided, would be surgical, not savage. That rule didn't make it easier. There were nights I wanted to send Lena messages that would tear her down through ridicule. There were hours I fantasized about ruining Daniel's career or exposing him at work. But in the quiet morning light, looking at my own reflection with mascara trails still dark under my eyes, I knew cruelty would breed nothing but new cruelties. I wanted not just a victory, but a life after it. Leverage could mean many things. For me, it started with information that didn't require breaking into anyone's phone or hacking emails. It meant using what was already visible, the social threads, the receipts, the public posts, the people who had seen things and kept quiet. I began to talk to people who had been around Lena and Daniel, old classmates, baristas, mutual friends who, in the end, just wanted someone to pick a side. I was careful and human. I listened. Stories emerged, small, insignificant on their own, but together they painted a portrait. Lena's habit of showing up at Daniel's workplace with surprise lunches. Daniel's mid-morning calls that lasted an hour and were always conference calls. A hotel concierge who'd seen the two leave together once and remembered a credit card name. None of it proved anything legally. But it built texture. It made their polished image crack. At the same time, I worked on my art. I started a series of paintings, half-portraits where the faces were obscured by weathered wallpaper, empty rooms with one chair turned away, hands holding faded photographs. I wrote a statement about invisibility and reclamation. I posted a few anonymous sketches on a local art forum. People began to respond. They told me their stories of being eclipsed by spouses, siblings, parents. The energy I got back was intoxicating in a healthy way. It reminded me that my pain connected with others, and that my voice could reach. Everything has a stage. For Lena and Dad, it was the neighborhood, the dinners, the PTA meetings. For Daniel, it was the work events and the charity galas where he looked impeccably loyal and devoted. For me, it would be the art world and the quiet places where truth could be told without screaming. I sent a subtle message to Rosa, the curator. I have a body of work that explores betrayal and rebirth. It's personal. If you want to see a preview, I'll bring it by. Her reply was a simple, bring it. I stayed vague. I told no one in the family. In private, I mapped out two simultaneous moves, the show and a quieter campaign of social exposure that would let gossip and curiosity do the rest. I would not orchestrate their downfall in a way that would put me legally at risk. But I would create a scenario where their reputations, carefully built and fragile, would begin to wobble under their own weight. Several weeks into the plan, I almost gave up. It was the small things that gnawed at me, the nights I cried until my throat hurt, the moments of loneliness where the plan felt like a cold, mechanistic thing that asked for a part of my soul. Sometimes I missed the person I loved, the idea of the life that never existed. Other times I feared becoming someone who orchestrated pain for sport. Maya caught me in that slump. I had been quiet at a cafe, staring at blank canvas. She sat down without asking and said, "You're not doing this to be cruel, I say. You're doing this so they can't pretend they didn't do what they did. And you're doing it so you can breathe again." Her words steadied me. There was no vindictive rejoicing in her eyes, only a steady hand. That was enough. By the time winter rolled back around, I had the bones of my plan. A small but influential gallery would host a show centered on stories of being unseen. Rosa had agreed, not because she loved a scandal, but because she loved art that provoked. I had built enough whispers among friends and old acquaintances that a few would show up curious. And I had a quiet list of people who owed me favors, photographers, a blogger who liked subversive local art, and Mr. Patel, who promised to bring members of the community who mattered. I did not know yet how much damage would be done when the gallery lights came up. I only knew this: I would stand in the center of my life and stop being background noise. When they saw me, and when other people saw the work I had made from the rubble, I wanted the air to change. I wanted the carefully constructed narrative of my family's perfection to shift, if only a degree. That was as much revenge as I wanted. The rest, the exposure of their secret, the ripple effect, I would let happen as it would. And as the final threads of the plan tightened, an odd, dangerous calm settled over me. The storm was coming. The gallery smelled faintly of varnish and old wood. Soft lights washed the walls, illuminating my work, pieces born out of sleepless nights and tear-stained sketches. Empty chairs in dim rooms. Portraits blurred and broken. A pair of hands reaching through a cracked mirror. The title of the exhibition was simple, Unseen. People began to trickle in. Curious locals. A few art critics Rosa had coaxed into attending. Maya was there, steady as always, a glass of wine in her hand and eyes that said, "You've got this." And then, just as I hoped, they arrived. Lena, dressed in a sleek black dress, her golden hair curled perfectly. Daniel, in a pressed suit, looking every inch the devoted partner. My parents followed, Mom beaming as if she had curated the show, Dad stiff and proud. They didn't come to support me. They came because appearances demanded it. Because in their world, ignoring me would look worse than pretending to be proud. Perfect. As the crowd moved through the gallery, whispers began. One painting showed a faceless couple embracing while a third figure, blurred, in shadow, stood in the background, unseen. Another depicted a dinner table with every chair full except one, that empty chair glowing with absence. But it was the final piece that caught them. A portrait of two figures under a streetlight. Their features weren't exact, but the resemblance was undeniable. The girl's smirk. The man's arm around her waist. And in the background, a car, headlights glowing, a shadowed figure gripping the wheel. Whispers grew louder. People glanced at Lena and Daniel, then back at the painting. Isn't that? Wait, it looks just like. Lena's face drained of color. Daniel's jaw clenched. I stood nearby, calm, sipping water like it was champagne. When a critic asked me, "Is this autobiographical?" I smiled and said, "Every piece is born from truth." I didn't need to scream. I didn't need to point fingers. The art spoke louder than any accusation ever could. Halfway through the evening, Rosa tapped her glass for silence. The artist will say a few words. The room turned to me. My heart pounded, but my voice was steady. Thank you all for coming. This collection is about invisibility. About being erased in your own story. But it's also about survival, about how betrayal doesn't just wound you. It reshapes you. It makes you see the truth. I let my gaze linger, deliberately, on Lena. Then on Daniel. Then on my parents. And sometimes, I continued, the people you think will protect you are the very ones who steal from you. Sometimes they take your voice, your place, even your love. But when you stop being invisible, when you stand here, in the light, their masks fall away. A hush fell over the room. People shifted, glancing between me and the guilty party standing stiff at the back. Lena forced a laugh. "Oh, don't be dramatic, I say. It's just art." But her voice cracked. And the crack was all it took. After the speech, people avoided Lena and Daniel. The whispers followed them like shadows. Someone asked Daniel about his loyalty, with a tone dripping in irony. A local blogger snapped photos of their pale faces, murmuring, "Scandal sells." My parents tried to play it off, but even their smiles faltered when neighbors began to ask quiet, cutting questions. "Evelyn, is that really what happened?" "Mark, did you know?" By the end of the night, Lena stormed out, heels clicking furiously. Daniel trailed after her, his perfect facade crumbling. My parents followed, not with pride, but with tight, embarrassed silence. I stayed behind, surrounded by people congratulating me, asking questions about my work, wanting to know my story. For the first time in my life, the spotlight wasn't on Lena. It was on me. the gallery was only the beginning. Within days, photos of the paintings and my speech hit local blogs, then social media. Artist exposes family betrayal through art, one headline read. Another, the Golden Girls' secret scandal. I never named names. I didn't have to. The internet did the work for me. Strangers speculated. Former classmates chimed in with stories about Lena's arrogance, about Daniel's flirtations. The narrative spread, messy and uncontrollable. Lena tried to post on Instagram a carefully curated photo of her and Daniel with a caption about true love. The comments section exploded with people quoting my words, "Sometimes the people who steal from you are the ones closest to you." Daniel tried to double down at work, but clients whispered. His boss pulled him aside. And when a screenshot of his hotel receipts somehow surfaced on a gossip forum, well, his credibility as trustworthy evaporated. And my parents? Their precious image of a perfect family shattered. Mom stopped hosting dinners. Dad avoided the neighbors. Their silence spoke volumes. Months later, when the dust had settled just enough for them to think the storm was over, I planned my second move. It was Lena's birthday. She was throwing one of her lavish parties, desperate to prove she still reigned as the golden child. Invitations went out to all the usual suspects, family, friends, community members. And somehow, mysteriously, one of those invitations found its way to me. I showed up unannounced, wearing a crimson dress that turned heads the moment I stepped inside. Conversation faltered. Glasses clinked nervously. Lena's smile froze. "What are you doing here?" I leaned in, whispering just loud enough for nearby guests to hear, "Just celebrating my sister. After all, you've given me so much inspiration." Throughout the night, I was polite. Sweet, even. But I made sure to drop subtle comments, each one a dagger wrapped in silk. "Oh, Daniel, do you remember that hotel on Main Street? Such unique lighting outside. Lena, that black dress reminds me of a painting I once did. You should come see it." By the end of the evening, people weren't talking about Lena's party. They were talking about me, about the sister who'd turned betrayal into art, about the golden child who now looked tarnished under the lights. And Lena? She fled to the bathroom halfway through, mascara streaking down her cheeks. It was at a community fundraiser months later, one my parents insisted on attending despite their frayed reputation. They wanted to prove they were still pillars of the neighborhood. The organizers, perhaps moved by my growing presence in the art scene, asked me to speak about resilience. And oh, did I. Standing at the podium, microphone in hand, I told my story. Not naming names, not slinging mud, but painting the betrayal in broad, vivid strokes. A sister. A lover. A family that chose silence over justice. I ended with this. Betrayal doesn't define you. Silence doesn't erase you. You define you. And sometimes, the best revenge is not destroying them, it's living so loudly, they can never erase you again. The room erupted in applause. People stood. My parents sat frozen, their faces masks of shame. That night, the shift was permanent. I was no longer the invisible daughter. I was Isabella, artist, survivor, the woman who stood in the light and told the truth. Here's the part no one saw coming. Months later, I got a call. It was Lena. Her voice was broken, brittle. "Daniel left me," she whispered. Turns out, betrayal breeds betrayal. The man who had cheated with her had cheated on her too. With someone younger, someone new. She cried, begging for comfort. For sisterhood. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel small. I didn't feel erased. I felt powerful. "Lena," I said quietly, "you taught me something important. Actions have consequences. And sometimes, karma doesn't need any help at all." Then I hung up. When the storm is over, silence feels strange. For months, I had lived in fire, planning, executing, surviving the fallout. My nights were filled with whispered conversations, scribbled notes, unfinished canvases. My days carried the heavy pulse of adrenaline. Revenge doesn't just consume your enemies, it consumes you. But once it was done, once Lena's mask cracked, once Daniel's life unraveled, once my parents' pedestal toppled, I found myself in an unfamiliar place. Quiet. And in that quiet, I learned what revenge really does. Lena no longer lived at home. Her parties had dried up, her friends had thinned out. Daniel had disappeared from our town entirely, leaving behind little more than rumors and debt. My parents walked more softly in public now. They no longer bragged about their perfect daughters. Instead, when they saw me, they chose their words carefully. Sometimes they asked about my art. Sometimes they even tried to apologize. But I didn't need their apologies. I didn't need their recognition anymore. For the first time in my life, their approval felt small. Optional. Because the world without them, without their weight, without their shadow, was brighter. Here's the truth, revenge didn't heal me. Not completely. Scars don't vanish just because you get even. But revenge gave me space. It gave me a voice when mine had been stolen. It gave me the stage to stand on and say, I am here. I am not invisible. And maybe more importantly, it gave me distance. I no longer looked at Daniel and saw the one I lost. I looked at him and saw a weak man who couldn't keep loyalty even with the woman he betrayed me for. I no longer looked at Lena and saw the golden child who eclipsed me. I saw someone small, desperate, scrambling for attention that no longer came. And my parents? They were just people, flawed, fragile, not gods on pedestals. Revenge turned giants into mortals. But here's the catch, and this is what I want anyone listening to truly hear. Revenge isn't the end. If you live in it too long, it eats you alive. What saved me wasn't the downfall of Lena or Daniel. What saved me was what I built for myself in the ashes. My art. My independence. My ability to walk into a room and no longer feel like background noise. Because the best revenge isn't destruction. It's survival. It's success. It's becoming so whole that the people who tried to break you can't even recognize you anymore. The last time I saw Lena was at a grocery store. She looked smaller somehow, her once perfect hair tied in a messy bun, dark circles under her eyes. She spotted me and froze. For a moment, I thought she'd lash out, blame me again. But instead, she whispered, "You won." I looked at her, really looked at her. And I realized something shocking. I didn't feel triumph. I didn't feel joy at her defeat. I felt nothing. "No, Lena," I said softly. "I didn't win. I just stopped losing." Then I walked away. Today, I hang my paintings in galleries where strangers connect with my story. I teach workshops for young artists who've been told their voices don't matter. I laugh louder. I breathe deeper. Do I still feel the sting of betrayal sometimes? Yes. Healing isn't a straight line. But I also feel gratitude, not for what they did, but for what I found in myself because of it. Revenge gave me fire. But healing gave me peace. And if you take anything from my story, let it be this. Sometimes the people who betray you think they've stolen your future. But the truth is, they've only cleared space for you to build a better one. And the sweetest revenge isn't watching them fall. It's watching yourself rise.